y'all, Briston here from Lucky Dragon Collectibles, and today I got myself the Dragapult EX League Battle deck, and I'm going to be doing a first part of 2 episodes regarding this particular League Battle deck. Now, before I begin, I would like to kindly ask y'all to please like and share this video and subscribe to my channel. I am a growing content creator and I appreciate any and all help, and a like and a subscribe goes a long ways for me, and I greatly appreciate it. I also have an online Pokemon card shop as well. Please check out my site at luckydragon-collectibles.com, where I have a variety of sealed Pokemon card goods on awesome and great deals. Buy from my shop. And lastly, I'm trying to hit 250 subs, and I'm doing a promo giveaway for that. Check for the link in the description box down below, watch that video, follow the instructions, and get yourself entered for a chance to win a promo card. And may you be lucky in winning that promo as well. Anyways, just like I mentioned already, I'm going to be doing a 2-part episode, with this one being the very first episode. We're going to be covering the League Battle deck itself. We're going to take a look at the specs, the cards themselves, have a good fundamental understanding of how this deck operates, and then, some things that I would want to change out of this deck if I had the option to change it. But later this week, I'm going to be going to my local tournament, and I'm going to actually do the second part of the episode and find out whether or not I can win a tournament with just a League Battle deck straight out of the box. But let's take a look at this box itself. And I do want to say, and I didn't acknowledge this with the Charizard one too, but this is actually a really cool box itself. Like, for a collector's value kind of thing, it's got a lot of like the pop outs or the engravings, like this fireball right over here, and the dragon scales too. This is super cool for a League Battle deck itself. Like, it just gives it a lot more definition behind the product itself, and it makes it like a very valuable collector's item in my opinion. So like, I like a lot of these League Battle decks, how they kind of like have some kind of style behind it, but I didn't realize that they actually do like a lot of these little engravings. So like, this is pretty cool. I really do enjoy this, and it's kind of a shame that I don't have like a secondary one where I can actually like put it up with my shelf stuff or whatnot, but you know what? That's okay. We have at least one here, and I was lucky to actually get this one copy myself, so that way we can actually do a little review here. And just to get a little bit of an idea about what's inside the box itself too, if you're not too terribly familiar with it, we will be getting a full 60 cards. We're going to be getting some damage counters here, a flip coin die itself. We're going to have condition markers. We're also going to be getting a deck box with that. There's going to be a strategy sheet in here. If you don't know how this deck operates itself, it will kind of spell it out for you. And then we're also going to get a code card to be able to play with this deck online. And just looking at the card list off the bat here. So that's going to be pretty much it here with the deck list itself. But, and I'm going to feel really, really sad about this, because this is definitely a really, really cool box. Let's just admire this one last time. You can see all that sheen here with my lighting here. It's super cool. A dragon deck with all the cool skills and the fire behind it too, but sad to say, this box needs to get open. So let's crack her open, get these cards sleeved up, and talk a little bit more about this deck. And I'm not sure whether or not this is going to look good or not, but let's just try. Let's try and see if I can pull this off successfully. All right, so we have our damage counter, our condition counters right here. This is going to be our little sheet. I shouldn't push that too far, but our little sheet about telling us how we are going to be playing this deck out more specifically. So if you're ever so curious what it looks like, it's going to be telling us a little bit more information. I'm just going to hold it just real quick so you can kind of screenshot that or read that or pause it so you can read it yourself. And of course, it's got some suggestion cards. Here's another one. I'm going to just pause it right here, or give you guys the opportunity to pause it so you can read. Sorry if there's any reflection or not. But kind of giving you a little bit of an idea about what we're going to be replacing in this deck itself. Let me just set these aside here. And let's go ahead and crack that open right there. Woo! Very gently. We're going to remove that code card. That's mine. Sorry, guys. Hey, take a look at these die. This is actually pretty nice. Ooh. I do like how it has like a little bit of that funny spray onto it, so it gives it a little more definition. Nice solid colors. Reminds me of the Gardevoir EX deck. And then the die itself is kind of fun. It's got a little bit of that green in there, so it's like matching up with the dragon itself. So that's pretty neat. I like it. Our actual deck is inside this deck box right here. Again, it's very cool because we got that dragon theme. Unfortunately, our deck is no way going to be able to fit in there because as tiny as this is, it's just the cards itself. And I will be double sleeving these guys, so this is going to probably be like that huge in comparison. And of course, we have our it's going to be what, 6 cards. I thought there's 4 right here, but we have 4 Dragapult EXs, that Unfair Stamp, and Fizzipity EX. So these are like our gold star cards in this entire deck box. So I'm really, really excited. This is going to be great. So I'm going to need to crack these guys open. So just a little bit of that movie magic. Let me try and get everything set up. And come on, I can do this. Right? Here we go. All right, here we go. Perfect. Now I got my deck all set up here, all nice and neat. So let me go ahead and just break down the deck. And like I said, this is way too huge. To give you an idea, I'm totally gonna be able to fit it in this box, right? All right. Enough goofing aside here. Let's talk about the deck itself, though. So I'm gonna go ahead and break down what we have inside the deck and talk a little bit about the cards and the strategy behind it as well. So let's take a look at all of our energies. We're going to have a total of 10 energy, 4 fire, and then 6 psychic. Not that bad. I like the idea of 10 energy. It gives us a nice little healthy balance of being able to have the appropriate powering up of our Pokemon and stuff like that. It's going to help us have that nice synergy. I don't like it when decks run like 5 or so energies, because then that makes it very much more like super dependent that you get your cards drawn, you know? With 10, I feel it's a very healthy amount where you can play it a little bit around, be a little bit more risky with the play factor. So, our big boy, our main player of the deck, Dragapult EX. This is a beast of a dragon card here. It's at a whopping 320 HP. It has no weaknesses whatsoever, 1 retreat cost. Now, it's 2 attacks. Well, the first one, Jet Headbutt, only at 70. It's not something to, shout from the mountains about. However, it has come in clutch moments. But the big thing is Phantom Dive. For 2 energy, more specifically a fire and a psychic energy, you do 200 damage. Then you can put 6 damage counters on an opponent's benched Pokemon in any way you like. So you can divvy up that damage and just spread it around. So kind of giving you a little bit of the idea of what this deck does is that you want to kind of basically get to your Dragapult EX. This deck seems to be a little bit more of a moderately speed one compared to like other Dragapult decks in the past or in recent times too. But you want to get to your Dragapult EX, deal damage, and then basically either focus it onto specific Pokemon or spreading it around so that way you can do significant amount of damage with specific plays. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to certain cards as well too. But that's the big pull with the Dragapult EX deck. That's what we really want to do with it. So there's a lot of ways that this deck is going to be doing so that we can draw to this card, get to this card, and power it up sufficiently. Technically, by turn 2, you could pretty much attack with a Dragapult EX right off the bat. Now, whether or not you want to do that, it's questionable. It really depends on what's going on in the situation. But I'm going to set the Dragapult EX right over here. It is going to get a pretty full map over here. But it is a fantastic card. Super hard to defeat and then just maneuver around it. Because as soon as it comes out, it's an immediate threat. Such a high HP by turn 2 and dealing that much damage and then spreading it around Pokemon. If you don't have sufficient enough Pokemon with high enough HP, Dragapult EX will be knocking them out like consistently every single turn. And you can just get wiped out by turn 3 or 4 if you're not careful. Even worse, turn 2. So our next one here is its stage 1 form, the Draclock. Now, Draclock is a fantastic card because of its ability, the Recon Directive. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them into your hand, and then put the other card on the bottom of your deck. This gives you the draw ability that you're going to be needing to go through your deck, pulling out what you need specifically to power up your entire bench area and get your setup going. So that way you can just start hitting consistently and being able to dish out that damage and be in a major threat. Again, we also have the Dragon Headbutt at 70 damage, very similar to the Jet Headbutt. but we are not really going to be using our Dragalocks for damaging unless we are really, really desperate. They're going to be sitting in our bench, being able to do the recon directive every single turn as much as we can. We're going to set that down over here. Our next one up, we are running 4 Dreepies. This is the base stage form for the Dragapult EX, and it's pretty simple. We have Petty Grudge for 10 damage and then Bite for 40 damage. We're really not going to see Dreepy really do any real damage other than if we get unlucky and we'll have to attack with Petty Grudge or Bite. Shouldn't really happen, but if you get stuck or whatnot, Dreepy will probably be the very first thing in play, so that way it will take the brunt damage, and then you're going to have other ones hopefully on your bench, or you'll be filling up your bench with them and being able to evolve to a Dragalock and eventually to a Dragapult EX. We're going to set our Dreepies right there. Next one up is Xatu. So we're going to be evolving. We got 3 copies of the Xatu, and then we're going to have a Natu. But real quick here, you know what, let me just talk about the Natu real fast though. The Natu, 50 HP, it's not going to be anything. The stage 1, or the basic form of this Pokemon, not really something that we're going to be caring for. We might even have to do a sacrificial if we have to, but we want to keep Natu bench because we want to really get him into Xatu over here. I'm going to set that Natu aside here, and the Xatu is the more important card, or another engine for this deck to function, and its ability, Clairvoyant Sense, is the reason for this. So its ability is, once during your turn, you may attach a basic Psychic Energy card from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon. If you attach energy to a Pokemon this way, draw 2 cards. So again, between Xatu and then our Dragalocks, we're going to be using them as our pull engines from our deck in order to give us the ability to draw more cards and get to things that we desperately need in order to start dishing out that damage. And again, not going to be our attacker, but it does have Super Psy Bolt at 80 damage. It just requires 1 Psychic and then 2 colorless here, or just 2 energies. So if we're really, really desperate, we could utilize Xatu to be an attacker if we really, really have to. But again, just like the Dragalocks, unless we're evolving the Dragapult EX, we're going to be trying to keep Xatu benched and make sure that he's safe so we can keep sufficiently being able to draw successful cards. Next one up is a fantastic supporter card, Tatsugiri. With 70 HP, it is another dragon-type Pokemon. And the one thing that makes Tatsugiri great, because he's definitely not going to be able to attack, as you can see with his energy typing, we have his fire and water. We have no water in this deck, so we're not going to be able to use Surf for 50 damage. But the big thing about Tatsugiri is attract customers. I find this very funny because I'll tell a little bit of the story about attract customers in just a little bit here. But what it does is that once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck, reveal a supporter card you find there, and then put that card into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. I laugh about this card because as a online shop owner too, I just find it funny because it's attract customers, and that's what I'm doing. And it's a little dragon too. It looks like it's a water type. Nope, it's a dragon, and I think that's kind of funny. But Tatsugiri is a fantastic supporter card for supporters. If you run a lot of supporter cards like this deck kind of does, you're going to be able to pull the specific supporters, hopefully, or be able to draw them out. If you are not already getting them out with Xatu and with Dragalock, Tatsugiri is going to help you kind of sift through your deck and being able to pull them out specifically. Also, the other positive thing too is if you're kind of like deck locked and you're not pulling things, or things are kind of clumped up, he's going to give you that ability to shuffle your deck or reshuffle your deck at that point. So that's going to help you out. Our final one for our Pokemon in the deck here is going to be a Fizzipity EX. If you're not already familiar with this Pokemon here, he's not really going to be doing a whole lot. He's another support-based Pokemon, only at 210 HP. The biggest thing about Fizzipity, though, is flip the script. And that's once during your turn, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you may draw 3 cards. You can't use this ability more than once, though, for each turn. It also has the ability for Cruel Arrow, which has come in clutch moments, and it kind of synergizes with Dragapult EX. If you're very, very desperate, or you're needing to switch out because it's way too damaged, you could potentially throw out Fizzipity and use Cruel Arrow, which this attack does 100 damage to one of your opponent's bench, or one of your opponent's Pokemon. Doesn't matter if it's bench or in the active spot. I mean, you just don't apply weaknesses or resistance to this attack. So this could come out in a clutch moment, but really we're going to be playing Fizzipity in the event that any of our Pokemon get knocked out. We get an additional 3 more cards when it comes to our turn. So next one up, we're going to be talking about our supporters. And for supporters here, we are running 3 Arvins, or 3 copies of Arvin. Not familiar with Arvin here, but I'm familiar, but if you're not familiar with Arvin here, Arvin basically, you search your deck for an item card and a Pokemon tool card, reveal them, and then put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. This is a staple for a lot of decks, especially if you're running tools, which this deck does. We're running 4 different tools. So 3 copies of Arvin, we're going to be able to pull out specific drawing cards that we're going to be wanting to do, alongside with those tool cards as well. So very, very nice. Good amount of Arvins as well for the deck. We're going to set Arvin. Actually, let me see if I can squeeze Arvin over here. Sorry, Fez, you're going to get covered just a little bit. Next one up, we have Who's It? What's It? I don't know. I forgot how her original quote goes for the first part. Like, your eyes are entranced in her, like, magnets. I can't remember. You're caught in her, like, electro web. Who's it? What's it? I don't know. And yes, I'm cheesy. I do say Who's It? What's It? I don't know when I do play this supporter. And for those who don't know, the uninitiated, I don't know, does this. Each player shuffles their hand and then puts it at the bottom of their deck. If either player puts any cards at the bottom of their deck in this way, each player draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. Now, with this deck, from what I can see and guess how it operates, it's a pretty mid-speed deck. So if you're losing out in the damage department and getting enough prizes on your side, this could be more of a clutch card for you, where you're going to be having your opponent and yourself reshuffle your hand and then being able to like shorten their hand while you can get more cards, and definitely with your drawing cards to being able to resupply your hand and being able to get more cards that you're going to be needing to help you out in the fight itself. So Iono is a really good shaker upper and upsetting the game, especially if you know that your opponent has also done specific searches and is waiting for a specific evolution on their next turn because they just played a base Pokemon or something like that. This is going to help shake it up for you and put that little bit more of a success on your end. We're going to go ahead and pop her right over here. Let's go ahead and continue where we last left off here, just because I had to stop the recording just so I can switch out for a new battery. All right, so next on up we only have a single copy of Boss's Orders. I find that a little bit interesting, but for those who don't know what Boss's Orders does, it lets you switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. So you get to select a Pokemon and be able to smack with it. Now, normally you want to use this and maybe knock out like a lower HP Pokemon with Dragapult and throw out more damage out there. Or you can drag out something that has a lot of HP but not capable of fighting back, and then just basically snipe your opponent's benched Pokemon from afar here. But I find it interesting, they're only just running one copy of the Boss's Orders. I like to see more of it myself, but I'll talk a little bit about when it comes to cards I would want to change out from this deck. But moving on to our next one, we have another singular supporter card, and that's going to be Professor Turo's Scenario. This is another good clutch card in what I would describe it as, but you would basically put one of your Pokemon that's in play into your hand. You're going to discard all cards attached to that Pokemon. Now, you're not discarding like evolution, say like we have a very wounded Dragapult EX, say like it only has 10 more HP left. You'd play Professor Turo's Scenario. You'll collect all evolution forms, place them back into your hand, but you'll discard the energies. This is basically to help you deny your opponent of a defeat and being able to claim more prizes. This also can come into play where, like, if you are having a difficulty being able to switch out Pokemon, like if you have someone that's locking your Pokemon, say like with a Wellspring, Ogerpon, or with a Maractus right now, where it prevents your Pokemon from retreating, you can use this to help retreat and like a pseudo retreat essentially. So this can be very helpful in situations, like I said, it's a very clutch based card. But we have another interesting clutch based card too, and that's going to be Mela. Now for her, she's a very situational based card. You can only use this card if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. So something similar to Fezzippity EX, again, if you're not familiar with how it works out with certain abilities and what cards do. But if your Pokemon was knocked out last turn from your opponent, you would basically play Mela, which she will allow you to attach a basic fire energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. If you do this, you get to draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. So, the nice thing about this is that you're going to be able to reclaim one of our fire energies because we only run 4 of them, and if we're missing out some of them, we might not be able to power up our Dracloak EX. So we could just, in theory, if someone gets knocked out, be able to play Mela, pull that fire energy, place it onto one of our Dragapult series line here, and then be able to replenish our hand if we don't already have a full hand of 6 cards. So you definitely want to play this before you use any abilities, and this can help you get back your energy if you did miss this out. So that's going to be our end for our supporter-based cards. Our next up is that we're going to have our item-based cards, or trainer-based item cards. And our first one up here is the Unfair Stamp. Very similar again with Mela here, and alongside with Fizzipity. You can only play this card or only use this card if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. If you use this card, each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then you, as the player, draw 5 cards, and your opponent draws 2 cards. Nice thing about this card, it basically denies your opponent their succeeding hand or any kind of critical plays if they had knocked out one of your Pokemon. This is going to reduce their hand size, reduce their hand down to 2 cards, and then you get a brand new set of 5 cards. Hopefully that'll be a better than what you originally currently have, especially if you have nothing in your hand. Or if you're drawing out stuff and you're trying to hit a specific one, this can help you draw out your specific card. So you might want to try to play it out. Say like, I'm trying to reach out my boss's order and I know there's one in there. It's not prized. I saw it there earlier when I was doing a deck search, like what we'll be talking about in a little bit too. We could play it, like before we play Unfair Stamp, maybe we've already done our draw outs and then we use Tatsugiri to shuffle up that deck. We did do a Fizzipity EX and we did a Mela. Let's just throw that out there. Well, then we can do an Unfair Stamp just so we can see if we can shake things up and get to our other cards as well too. Or we can do it beforehand, depending on how you want to play it and how the scenario comes out. But this is a really good card. Again, very similar to Iono, where you're going to shake up the game and then kind of deny your opponent of their hand while also replenishing or getting you some new cards. Our next one up, and this is very much another staple within any given deck for the most part, we have 4 copies of the Ultra Ball. This basically, in order to use this card, we do need to discard 2 cards in our hand to use it. But when we do so, we get to search our deck for a Pokemon card, reveal it, and then put it into our hand, and then we're going to then shuffle our deck. This, again, gives us the ability to hunt and look for any of our particular Pokemon that we need. Most primarily is to be our evolutionary types, and being able to put them into our hand so that we can evolve them either that turn or in the following turn. This also kind of helps us out furthermore with being able to look into our decks and find out what Pokemon do we actually have or what cards do we actually have in there too. It's an advanced strategy itself. Now another one we have another staple I feel like is 4 copies of the Buddy Buddy Poffin. This is going to allow you to search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon, but the stipulation is with 70 HP or less, and then put them into your bench. And then we're going to go ahead and shuffle our deck right after that. So in this case here, this is going to be very, very helpful getting a lot of our base Pokemon, which are at 70 HP or less, and then being able to replenish our bench at that point. We won't be able to pull out Fez at that point, and of course we can't pull any of our Stage 1s or Stage 2 evolutions at that point too. But again, that's going to help us get our cards kind of set up for our bench specifically. And speaking of a setup too, our next one we have 2 copies of Earthen Vessel. And this one's a great energy searching card. Now, similar to the Ultra Ball, you will need to discard a card from your hand in order to use this card. And then when you do so, you get to search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and then put them into your hand. Then you're going to go ahead and shuffle your deck. I'm going to slide these guys right over here. But very similar to the Ultra Ball, instead of Pokemon though, we get to search up for energy specific. So that's going to be very, very helpful if we have no energies whatsoever. And we definitely need to have at least 1 or 2 of the energies for our Dragapult EX to start swinging going forward. Next on up, we do have is 2 copies of Rare Candy. This is going to be a little bit lengthy here, but stay with me on this one here, folks. But if you don't know what Rare Candy does, choose one of your basic Pokemon in play. If you have a Stage 2 card in hand that evolves from that Pokemon, put that card onto the basic Pokemon to evolve it. Skip the Stage 1. You cannot use this card during your first turn or on a basic opponent that was played during this turn. So that's the only stipulations behind the Rare Candy itself. But basically, you're going to be either using the Rare Candy to evolve Dreepy, skipping Dracloak to go into Dragapult EX, and that's going to be pretty much it. Since Stage 1 is going to be what the Xatu is, we're not going to really be using our Rare Candies for anything else other than getting us right away to Dragapult EX if we're in a desperate need to do so. Next on up, we only have 1 copy of a Counter Catcher. Now, Counter Catcher is a unique kind of pulling or grabbing card for your opponent's bench. And you can only use this card, another stipulation, you can only use this if you have more prizes than your opponent. And it functions just like a boss's order, just with that one stipulation. But again, it lets you switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. So if you're behind on winning prizes against your opponent, this can come into a clutch and you'll be able to pull out a Pokemon and then either knock out that Pokemon or maybe make it be kind of like a soaker, and then you'll be able to, again, snipe Pokemon from their bench. I'll scoot this over just a little bit so we can have more space. Our next other card here we run a single copy of is a Super Rod. Very helpful card in utility and making sure that if you lost out cards or anything like that, we can put them back in our deck. And what it does again, specifically, we get to shuffle up to 3 of any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from our discard pile into our deck. So say like if we discarded too much stuff, or we have Pokemon that got knocked out, or we lost out on our energy, Super Rod's going to help us replenish and regain those cards. But we only got 1 copy, so by the time we use it, we got to make sure we make the right decision about what we want back in our deck at that point. Next one up, we do run 1 copy of a Switch, a very classic staple card since Basic. And what Switch does, it lets you switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So you don't have to do a retreat. You get a free, well, not really free, but you do use an item card in order to switch out a Pokemon here. So in the event that someone maybe pulled out a Pokemon just so that if you ran out of energy or whatnot and you're kind of struggling, you get that free switch out, and that'll help you out. That's all of our item-based cards. Let's talk about our last setup stuff here, and that's going to be our tool-based cards. We would talk about stadiums, but we don't have any stadiums in this deck, which is something I'll talk about too, but we do have 4 tools. And of the 4 tools, 2 of them are rescue boards. This is a pretty useful and resourceful tool. By attaching this to any given Pokemon, the retreat cards for that Pokemon, of the Pokemon this card is attached to, is 1 energy less. And if the Pokemon has 30 HP or less, it has no retreat cost. So very, very helpful in trying to like switch out your Pokemon. And nice thing about this, all of our Pokemon has only 1 energy retreat. So basically attaching this rescue board to any of our Pokemon gives us a free retreat back into our bench and then being able to switch out to something else. There's a strategy behind it. I will talk about that. Well, let me share. Like an example with the rescue board, you might want to pop that onto your Tatsugiri and might maybe put the other one on the Dragapult EX. So for an example, it would be like you want to switch out, or you can do like a switch, or I don't see if they have like anything else, but what if they did something else that would pull out your Tatsugiri, or somehow you can pull your Tatsugiri, you can do like a switch, do attract customers with the rescue board on top of the Tatsugiri, retreat back into your Dragapult EX. So that's a nice little strategy there that will definitely help you out in making sure that you kind of pull supporter cards that you're looking for, while at the same time giving you the opportunity to attack. Our next tool-based card we have here, we actually have 2 different types of TMs. I'll just talk about them both at the same time because they both kind of do something similar but at the same time different. Now, technical machines, I'm going to go off real quick. They are tools that you attach onto your Pokemon, but you have to use it that turn that you attach it, because at the end of your turn, these cards get discarded. What the evolution card does, you need to have at least 1 energy on your Pokemon, and if you do use it, you get to choose up to 2 of your benched Pokemon, and then for each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from that Pokemon, and then put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it, and then shuffle your deck. Likewise, with the de-evolution, it's counter to that, but it's more helpful than you think. The de-evolution one, again, with 1 energy, you get to de-evolve each of your opponent's evolved Pokemon by putting the highest stage evolution card on it into your opponent's hand. So these can be played in different ways, such as if you just have any one of the given Pokemon out, and primarily you want to use this for evolving for Tazatu or to a Dragapult EX, or even into the Draclocks. You're going to be putting in 1 energy and then attaching this tool onto any of the Pokemon that you have in your active spot, using this and then evolving at least 2 of your Pokemon, so that way you can secure yourself in getting your drawing engines or an attacking Pokemon. And then lastly here, with the de-evolution, this is one of the main strategies with the deck when I'm talking about when it comes to sniping. Say like your opponent is stacked up with a lot of stage 1s or stage 2 Pokemon that are really, really high in HP, but they're stage below it, like say like, Dragapult EX for an example. Let's go for our HP so you can see the differences, right? Dragapult EX is 320, where Dracloak is 90. Well, say like they have a bunch of injured Pokemon because you kept on doing Phantom Dive and you put in so many different damage die on them. If you remember what your opponent's their previous stage form's HP is at, you can match up at it or getting it higher when you're spreading out your Phantom Dive's counters. And then instead of doing another Phantom Dive to knock out, like trying to attack out, you can do a de-evolution. And then you could potentially even knock up to 3 Pokemon in 1 turn. And that can drastically shift the gameplay itself from the point where your opponent might look like they might have a chance of winning to they will have zero chances of winning at that point. But who knows? That's one thing I really love about this game is that there's a lot of twists and turns and it's a fun little power struggle going back and forth. So with this card alone and that strategy alone too could help you out in either cinching the win or also doing something very devastating to your Pokemon, or your opponent's Pokemon, or your opponent's gameplay overall. Now, that's all the cards in here. Just looking at the deck itself and understanding how Dragapult EX decks work, this is what I would consider a kind of like a medium speed deck. It's not necessarily slow, but it's not necessarily fast. Reason I say this, like pre-rotation back in earlier this April here, having like Pokemon like the Radiant Alakazam, or having like ways of accelerating, getting energy onto your Pokemon, like for most part, getting your Dragapult EX is like you're focusing more so not really on the drawing engines, but really just pulling out Dragapult EX and then just starting swinging by turn 2. Well, that kind of changed it up, and especially with the loss of Radiant Alakazam, rethinking about how we approach the fight. So, like, a lot of times we don't see a lot of like fast Dragapult EX decks. Not saying that there isn't some. I fought against a handful of them, but not by a whole lot. More commonly, you find decks very similar to this one, at least when I see it in the physical meta. And then online, I see more of the slower version Dragapult EX decks, or some hybrid between the slow and medium. When I say slow and medium, here are some things that I would think about what I want to get rid of. So again, this is a medium speed deck. My success with Dragapult EX decks online have always primarily been around the slower version ones. And when I say slower version ones, it's the ones that are running with a Bidoof, for an example. And that's just to stall out your opponent at the same time to building up your attack. Because as soon as you're done, either whether they knock out your Bidoof or you pull back your Bidoof, you're ready to keep swinging consistently, constantly hitting your opponent, constantly putting the pressure onto them to being able to match up to your damage output or more. So that's my successes with the Dragapult EX. And looking at this one right here, this is a pretty solid medium speed deck. I like a lot of things about the deck. There are some things I don't like about the deck itself. I'm kind of curious how it will play out this Saturday and seeing how it will handle against the decks that I'm familiar with fighting against many of the people at my local tournaments. But here are some things I want to talk about. So we kind of acknowledge some of the strategies behind the deck itself, what we need to be basically doing. Again, we want to get our Dragapult EX out there, but we also want to be able to draw out our cards so that way we have the maximum output of, giving us that essential win. But what about the cards I don't like about this deck? I had some inclinations about things that I didn't like. So first and foremost, I kind of want to talk about is the supporters. One of the key supporters I really did like with Dragapult EX decks is Crispin. Crispin is a really, really helpful supporter and basically letting you be able to swing by turn 2, if anything else. Because Crispin lets you be able to pull 2 different energies. You're going to attach one freely to any Pokemon that you want, and then you put the other energy into your hand. So in this case, you would search up for a Psychic and a Fire, put one of the energy onto your Dragapult, and then you would attach for a turn onto your Dragapult. There and being, you're ready to start swinging by turn 2, if you were able to evolve it by turn 2 with like a rare candy, for an example. Another thing I'm not too fond with this deck, again, I want to run it with Bidoos because Bidoof basically it's a free 10 damage attack, even though Bidoof is a 30 HP Pokemon, but it does the 10 damage, and its Itchy Pollen attack stops your opponent from using items. This can stall them out or greatly hamper them in the very beginning of the fight, while giving you the ability again to start setting up, evolving, and getting your bench, your setup going quickly. It will give you that opportunity, and that's why I feel like with Bidoof, but sometimes Bidoos can hamper you down. So it's a positive, negative. It depends on who are you fighting and how well you know how that deck operates that you're fighting against. So that's one thing I feel like this deck is missing, but it would have gone from a medium speed deck to a slower deck. So I don't know, but I personally, I want to run a Bidoof or 2. The other thing too is that we have 2 Tatsugiris. Now, I'm fine with what we're running with right now. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm talking about Pokemon and I want to talk about supporters. I want to run more Boss's Orders. Personally, in my other Dragapult EX deck, I actually run more copies of Boss's Orders and Countercatcher. Countercatcher is for those like in the moment that I go too slow and I'm behind, it's going to give me the ability to start messing with my opponent, because a lot of times when I'm fighting against decks online, a lot of people tend to run with like less than 10 energy. So then I'm just keeping an eye on what they are attaching to their Pokemon, what kind of decks they are utilizing, and then I'm just going to pull out a Pokemon that has just enough HP where I'm not going to knock them out immediately, and they're going to be struggling, trying to put energy to retreat them or get them away and stuff like that. And I'm just going to take out stuff from the background. Just knock out their Pokemon in the background. Especially like when it comes like a Terrapagos, for an example. And I want to start knocking out their Hoot Hoots and stuff like that. So having that ability to be able to pull Pokemon and then move things around, I like that, especially with boss's orders. And the deck itself, it seems like you can get your setup pretty fast. So then having like all these excess cards could be a little bit more of a hamper. Iono is very great. I feel like maybe one less copy, but at the same time, I want more. Maybe run another Arven possibly, like so switch out the Iono for another boss's order or an Arven, something I would want to do, just so I can either give myself the ability to pull what I want, or pull specifically for my deck what I want to, so I can get to what I want. I find it interesting the deck is not running any nest balls at all, because I would want to run at least one or two just so I can get a Fizzipity, but considering that they're running 4 of them, usually you would see something like that, but they would run like a Precious Trolley for their ace spec. And that's so that way they can pull up all the cards that they want. But in all honesty, you wouldn't really need that, especially if you're using your nest ball successfully, you're getting the Buddy Buddy Poffins. I would almost want to just take out one Buddy Buddy Poffin for just one nest ball or two, switching around, maybe one less Ultra Ball too, just so I can have 2 nests, so I can definitely pull out Fizzipity EX, or pulling out anything else that I would probably need. Definitely wouldn't want to run one less Tatsugiri, just because you only really need one to attract customers, and having one too many of it, it's just like same thing with Fizzipity. You only really need one supporter of that kind. I'd rather use that for having, again, like a Bidoof, or maybe supplement something else for my items that I desperately would need. Another one that would not make the cut here is Mela. In fact, when it comes to the energies themselves, I would actually substitute to have one less Psychic, so I can have an even amount of 5 Fire, 5 Psychic, so that way I have 10 total, and it's an even amount, and I can play around with my energies here, and feel a little bit more like free to, like, if I needed to start discarding stuff, I can discard an energy, not feel pressured by that. But again, the other thing I don't like about Mela, even though I do reclaim one of my fire energies from my discard pile to a Pokemon right away, what if I already have a full hand? What if I have more than 6 cards? Especially if I'm drawing the way that I'll be drawing with these Pokemon. I don't want to not be able to only just move one card. That's why I'm like, I would rather use a Crispin instead to make sure I optimize in getting the best setup for my Pokemon. I do like I said, I already like the amount, so I'm seeing here. Maybe just switch out one of each copy just for 2 nest balls. I think the Earthen Vessels are just fine. The Rare Candy, considering that what we're already playing with too, that's another fine one too. Speaking of Rare Candy too, in fact, I almost would want to switch out 1 copy each. So like I feel like of the 4 Dragapults, I think taking 1 less copy of this, 1 less copy of a Xatu, and 1 less copy for a Natu, and run the Dust Noir family. Get a Dusclops, and Dust Noir. So that way I have the option to snipe from afar specific Pokemon if I want to snipe. And then it can also help trigger my Fizzipity if I'm not too low on my prizes and stuff like that. That's something I would definitely want to run out there. Take 1 less Tatsugiri and put maybe 1 Bidoof in here. I would want to run 2 to be honest, but 1 Bidoof would be okay as well too. Professor Turo's scenario is a iffy one. Between 2 types of clutch cards I do like. Professor Turo's scenario really helps out if you're trying to make sure that you don't get knocked out, essentially, and then rebuild or evolve from that point. But another good clutch card, and I always find this one to be absolutely really helpful, is the Briar card. Briar, it's very situational, though. You can only use her if your opponent has exactly 2 prize cards, and that ensures that whenever you knock out your opponent's Pokemon, you take 1 additional prize. So if you do take out one of their EX Pokemon, you get 3 prizes instead of 1. That's a big leap. And if you are able to use Dragapult successfully and then mitigate damage throughout your opponent's bench, you can definitely use a Briar, knock out their active Pokemon, and then snipe out 2 more Pokemon, and then you would end up getting basically what, 2, 3, 4, depending if you're knocking out EXs too, you can get all 6 or so. I've actually had that happen to me a couple times online. Someone using my own strategy against me, and I'm like, oh, I should have seen that coming. But you never know whether or not someone actually does run a Briar. You don't see it often enough, but I always find that Briar is a really, really successful clutch card, especially towards the end game itself. Another card I would run, again, I want to run more of too. I want to run more counter catchers. I'm just not sure what I would get rid of exactly. I would think nixing out the switch, while that is a staple in a lot of decks, I could substitute the switch for another counter catcher. Likewise, maybe another boss's order or something. Then depending, maybe we'll run one less rescue board, because 2 is a bit much, but one might be fine enough, because I could just throw it onto Tatsugiri for an example, or throw it onto my Dragapult EX, so then I can do like a free retreat and then get him into a safer position. Not too sure how I want to play that out. Like retreat him to Tatsugiri, do Tatsugiri's attract customers, and then do a switch. But if I take out my switch, that also throws that out completely. But usually a lot of Dragapult decks, including mine, I at least have one copy of the rescue board, just so I have options to run away if I have to run away. And especially if I don't have a Turo scenario. I like these TMs. These are, I feel, staple in a Dragapult EX. I've seen some players where they run one or more copies of each of these, or like switch to one or the other. But I think it's very healthy to have at least one of each, to be honest. So that way you have the ability to give yourself the option to evolve upwards, and then you have the option to super snipe at the very end if you need to do that. So those are some of the things I would want to change out from this deck. Again, if I was to do these kind of changes, it would definitely make this deck from a medium speed deck to a slower deck. But I feel like that's what would make this deck a little bit more successful. So I think if I ran it the way I really, really would want to, based off of what I can remember from my online deck, because I don't have my deck in front of me right now, one less Dragapult, one less Xatu, one less Natu, one less Tatsugiri. So we have, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. Get myself a family of the Dust Noir. Get myself a Bidoof. I might just take out one Iono. Maybe give myself another Arven. If not, I'll definitely put it towards my boss's orders. Change out the Mela for a Crispin. In fact, I might actually sack out Mela and a switch for another Crispin, like 2 Crispins. Sack out this rescue board for another counter catcher. Sack a Ultra Ball and a Buddy Poffin for 2 copies of a Nest Ball. I think I forgot to mention one more thing too. One more thing. This deck doesn't run any stadiums. So I've been seeing a lot in the current meta right now where people are running a lot of different types of stadiums that are very beneficial. Of course, how most stadiums are. Mostly towards their Pokemon than to you. I would almost think that one thing that would be kind of helpful for you, but it will be counter as well because we do run tools ourselves, Jamming Tower. I think at least 1 copy or 2 copies of a Jamming Tower could definitely help out this deck, because there's a lot of other decks, for an example, like a Raging Bolt or like any of the ancient kind of stuff, or other decks that use a lot of tools. Jamming Tower does a fantastic job of just messing with their gameplay and then ensuring that you are succeeding, because we're already going to be doing a sufficient amount of damage. Our tools are just more like utility based. We don't necessarily, we want to get rid of this as soon as we can at the very beginning, so we have the appropriate Pokemon, so we shouldn't be dealing with this mid to late game. This is more of a late game thing, so if they do end up getting rid of your stadium and you have this in hand or you're able to redraw this could be helpful. It would hurt you if you do have Jamming Tower and they haven't gotten rid of it and you have this in hand. I can see where it's hurtful, but if you're doing the right thing with Dragapult EX and really spreading out that damage, you should be able to secure some knocks in a turn or two. And then, of course, like the rescue boards, it's going to make them a moot point if we did have a Jamming Tower. But I think a Jamming Tower would be really, really helpful in this deck. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that would be very helpful that would make this deck be a little bit more successful itself. Other than that, too, I think this is a pretty fine setup for a basic, straight out of the box League EX battle deck, or EX League battle deck itself. Again, I would want to change up some stuff, but we're not doing that just yet, because we're pretty much done with this episode, but we will have a part 2. And again, that part 2 is when we go to our local tournament this weekend and see whether or not I can actually win with a straight out of the box Dragapult EX League battle deck. And that's going to be pretty much it for the video today. Again, just want to go over the high overview of the cards, strategy behind this deck, and some stuff that I would definitely want to change out when I get the chance to change out this deck. But I want to hear from y'all. What do you think? Do you think that this deck is fantastic the way it is already? What cards do you want to substitute out of this deck? Do you think that this is just fine as it is, or what do you want in your Dragapult EX deck? I want to hear from y'all. Leave a comment down below. And since you're watching this far into the video, I'd like to kindly ask you all again to please make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel. It will definitely help me out. I really appreciate it. Also, check out my online Pokemon card shop at luckydragon-collectibles.com. And make sure to enter my promo giveaway. Follow the link down below in the description box, and make sure to follow that video's instructions to the T, so that way you can enter to get yourself a chance for a promo card yourself. And again, good luck at winning the promo card. I want to thank you so very much for watching my video, and until the next video, take care, and may you be lucky with your pulls today. And definitely, I'll see you at the tournament.